Atlantis, Rediscovered, Part 2. Brittany and the military team step out onto the smooth stone-like surface. The air inside the shield is noticeably warmer, a stark contrast to the frigid Antarctic winds just meters away. Gathering their equipment quickly, they form a line behind the general, who cannot mask the excitement in his voice. "I think this is Atlantis," he murmurs almost to himself. "Yes, General, I believe you're right," Brittany explained. "Not sunken under water or a flood, but covered by snow and ice, or frozen water as the ancient people might call it. And this fact must have been lost in translation over time." The team moves through the streets that lead to the town square. The path is clear, the city structures imposing yet welcoming, as if inviting the explorers to uncover their secrets. The general leads, his military training taking over, every sense alert for any signs of danger or life. As they progress towards the city center, the sights that unfold captivate everyone. The architecture of Atlantis defies contemporary definitions, combining elegance with functionality. The buildings are tall and stylistically varied, suggesting different eras of construction and cultural influences, yet they harmonize seamlessly. The central feature of the town square is a pyramid-like structure, crowned with a crystallized capstone that glows with a pure white light, its light casting ethereal shadows on the stone pathways. The streets are lined with strange machines, sleek and aerodynamic, parked neatly as if their users had just stepped away momentarily. "These must be some form of transportation," the general observes, running his hand along the polished surface of the nearest vehicle. His touch leaves no smudges. He realizes that there is not even dust here. Everything in Atlantis is perfectly preserved, as if frozen in time. There are no signs of decay, no overgrowth of nature reclaiming the land, just an eerie, pristine stillness that suggests the inhabitants left only recently. The absence of any personal effects, debris, or even the usual wear of urban life makes the city feel like a movie set or a stage, waiting for its actors to return and resume the play. Brittany feels unease as they approach the heart of the city. The radiation detector begins to beep more insistently, drawing them towards the pyramid. The general pauses, turning to address the team. "For now, we move to the center of the town. There's a stronger radiation signal there we need to investigate. We'll delve into everything else in more detail later." As they reach the pyramid, the air around them tingles with the energy emanating from the crystal. The technology surrounding them is far beyond modern capabilities, suggesting a civilization that had mastered advanced energy utilization and possibly even climate control. The city feels alive, pulsating with a power. The interior of the pyramid is vast, with walls adorned with intricate hieroglyphics. Brittany Rocker, being an hieroglyphist as well as archaeologist, is naturally drawn to deciphering the scripts, sensing that they hold the key to understanding secrets they search for. Her team, equipped with digital scanners and translation software, joins her. As they scan the hieroglyphs, it becomes apparent that these are not just decorative elements, but a blend of linguistic scripts. The texts merge elements from ancient Sumerians to Egyptian, Minoan, and unknown symbols that suggest a confluence of language or civilizations, or perhaps a unique Atlantean language. Brittany pores over the digital renderings, piecing together the fragments of text. The basic idea here seems to revolve around a power source free of tether or weight, she explains, her voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. It implies a technology unbound by conventional energy constraints, something revolutionary, energy from the ether, gathered and distributed by the crystal capstone. Her team nods, their faces lit by the glow of their screens, all enraptured by the gravity of their discovery. Outside the pyramid, the military personnel guard the entrance. The general, a pragmatic man named Clayton Briggs, overhears snippets of Brittany's findings and can't help but imagine the implications. Walking among the silent, sleek street machines that line the pathways of Atlantis, General Briggs muses aloud to his second-in-command. Just think what you could do with a machine that didn't need to carry its power source with it. His tone is light, almost joking, but his eyes betray a deeper, calculating interest. We could revolutionize transportation, energy, warfare, virtually every aspect of modern life, he continues, his voice gaining a hint of excitement. With what we see here on the streets of this place alone, we could, hypothetically, of course, take over the world. His second in command, Lieutenant Mara Collins, nods, though she senses the underlying seriousness in his half-joking remark. The potential to harness such technology would indeed be game-changing on a global scale. Back inside the pyramid, Brittany's team makes another breakthrough. They uncover references to a central control mechanism, possibly linked to the city's power grid, located deeper within the structure. Brittany Rocker and her select group of team members, each chosen for their expertise, press deeper into the labyrinthine passages of the pyramid. The deeper they go, the more the technology of the pyramid reveals itself not merely as advanced, but interconnected with the very fabric of the city. The central crystal, they discover, isn't just a power source. It is the heart of Atlantis, regulating everything from the climate within the shield to the seemingly autonomous vehicles and machines on the streets. The group marvels at a sophisticated control room where holographic displays and interfaces shimmer with data. It's like the entire city is a living organism, and this crystal, it's the brain, muses Dr. Emil Lang, a physicist in Brittany's team. He gestures towards the panels that show streams of energy flowing throughout Atlantis, stabilizing and nourishing it. Meanwhile, General Briggs and his close advisors convene in a makeshift command center set up just outside the pyramid. The more the general learns about the central hub's capabilities, the more he is convinced of its strategic value. Behind closed doors, he begins to outline a plan to seize control of the crystal. We secure the hub, we control the city, and potentially much more, Briggs asserts to his team, his voice a determined growl. Imagine harnessing this level of technology. We could defend against any threat, advance our own tech by centuries. Lieutenant Collins, uneasy with the plan's implications, challenges him. Sir, aren't we here to assist in the exploration? Briggs dismisses her concerns with a sharp glance. Our primary duty is to our country's security. Lieutenant Collins leaks the general's intentions to Brittany. Her concern for the city's integrity grows. Realizing that the military might not just exploit but potentially destroy Atlantean technology for geopolitical gain, she feels a surge of protective urgency. Determined to safeguard Atlantis's secrets, Brittany convenes with her most trusted colleagues. They formulate a plan to preempt the military's move. Using her deepening understanding of the control mechanisms, she works to set up barriers in the system, creating cryptographic locks and initiating protocols that would make it difficult for anyone without extensive knowledge of Atlantean technology to take control, leaving her with the only key to Atlantis. As the tension in the pyramid's control room reaches a breaking point, General Briggs gives a subtle nod to his men. Understanding the cue, several soldiers begin a cautious advance towards Brittany, intending to disarm her and seize control of the Atlantean technology. Brittany, sensing the tightening circle of military personnel, knows she has only moments to act. Her eyes scan the control panel's luminescent displays. With precision, Brittany reaches for the panel. Her fingers dance across the holographic interface, tapping into the deep-seated knowledge she has acquired from the decrypted hieroglyphics earlier. She initiates a sequence and a hum begins to fill the room, a sound of ancient machinery springing to life. The air around her starts to shimmer as she successfully activates a defense mechanism, a protective energy shield that envelops her within a translucent, glowing barrier. The soldiers halt in their tracks, startled by the sudden display of advanced technology protecting Brittany. The shield radiates a soft, pulsating light, casting eerie shadows across the walls of the pyramid. It hums with power. Inside her newly formed sanctuary, Brittany stands resolute, her gaze fixed on General Briggs. Briggs, frustrated, his plan to simply seize control is foiled by the very technology he sought to dominate. The room falls silent. All eyes are on Brittany. Brittany, encased in her shimmering shield of Atlantean technology, stands defiantly as General Briggs and his men regroup. Her voice, amplified by the acoustics of the control room, rings out with a fiery intensity. "I will not let this discovery fall under the cloak of the military-industrial complex," she declares, never to be heard of, her words echoing off the ancient stone walls. The general, visibly taken aback by her vehemence, attempts to regain control of the situation. "Now look, Missy, you seem to forget we are your ride out of here," he retorts, injecting a note of authority into his voice. Brittany laughs, a sound that resonates with both mockery and disbelief. "For a general, you're not very good at reading tactical advantage situations, are you? Meaning you're not really good at your job," she teases, ribbing the general with a smirk that belies the seriousness of their standoff. The general's face reddens, outrage replacing the calculated calm he had maintained. "How dare you!" he screams, his command voice echoing harshly in the tense air. "I demand you step down and away from the control panel." Unmoved, Brittany shakes her head, her expression one of mock pity. "You fail to see that I have full control of Atlantis now," she claims, bluffing. Her knowledge of the systems was basic at best, and she was indeed fortunate to pull off the maneuver she had. Briggs, reaching his limit of tolerance, gestures furiously to his men. "I've had enough," he growls. "Let's test that shield of yours," he adds, a sinister sneer crossing his face. "You know, for science." At his command, a dozen soldiers raise their weapons and unleash a hail of bullets towards Brittany. The room fills with the deafening sound of gunfire, but as the bullets strike the Atlantean shield, the shield glimmers and flickers under the onslaught, absorbing each impact with a burst of radiant energy that illuminates the room in pulses of light. Despite the ferocity of the attack, the barrier holds firm, absorbing the energy of the bullets as they fall harmlessly at her feet, its integrity unbreached. The soldiers, stunned by the ineffectiveness of their assault, cease firing, their weapons clicking empty. The general watches, his fascination overtaking his anger as the shield stands resolute, its technology a testament to a civilization far surpassing their own. Brittany, still safely ensconced within her protective dome, meets the general's gaze with a triumphant smirk, her confidence bolstered by the shield's performance. In the aftermath of the failed assault on her protective shield, Brittany, still within the vibrant cocoon of Atlantean energy, addresses General Briggs with a steely resolve. The control room is tense, the air thick with the smell of discharged firearms and the shimmering echo of the shield's defense. Brittany's voice cuts through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "If you do not withdraw your forces immediately," Brittany declares, her gaze locked on the general's, "I will destroy the crystal. This city's secrets are not for your taking." Her hand hovers over a particular console on the control panel, her fingers poised above a sequence of glyphs. Bluffing. She had no real clue of the outcome of pushing these glyphs, but she had no cards left to play. General Briggs realizes the gravity of her threat. Destroying it would unleash catastrophic consequences, erasing a millennia of knowledge and innovation in an instant. "Leave!" Brittany continues, her voice unwavering. "Leave now, and leave your intentions of exploitation behind. My 2 pilots, stay here. They will be unharmed, but the rest of you must go." The general weighs his options, his eyes darting from his men to Brittany and back. With a curt nod, signaling defeat, the general issues the order for retreat. The military personnel, visibly shaken and reluctant, begin to withdraw from the pyramid, casting wary glances at the glowing barriers. As the sound of boots and equipment fades away, the tension in the air slowly dissipates, replaced by a profound silence. Brittany lowers her hand from the control panel, her heart heavy with the burden of what she had done. After the departure of General Briggs and his troops, Brittany finds herself alone in the vast control room of the Atlantean pyramid. The weight of her responsibility as the guardian of such profound knowledge settles heavily on her shoulders. She approaches the control panel once again, her fingers tracing the ancient symbols. Brittany's primary goal now is to fully unveil Atlantis to the world in a way that ensures its preservation and understanding rather than exploitation. Brittany begins by exploring the functions of the control panel more thoroughly. Her attention is drawn to a series of intricate dials and switches that seem to regulate the environmental settings both inside and outside the shield. To her amazement, she discovers that the ferocious snowstorm above, which had acted as a natural barrier concealing Atlantis, was artificially controlled and set at a surprisingly low intensity. With a touch of whimsy, Brittany adjusts the controls. 70 degrees? I prefer 72, she murmurs to herself, enhancing the average temperature of Atlantis by a couple of degrees. The climate within the shield responds almost immediately, the air warming slightly, making the atmosphere inside Atlantis even more inviting. Encouraged by her successful adjustment of the weather controls, Brittany next focuses on the more significant task of manipulating the cloaking technology that shrouds Atlantis. She deduces that if she can lift the veil even temporarily, she can broadcast the existence and location of Atlantis to the world, ensuring no one entity could ever monopolize its secrets. Her fingers glide over the control surfaces, guided by intuition and the snippets of knowledge she has pieced together from the hieroglyphs. Finally, she finds the sequence she needs. With a deep breath, she initiates the command, and the energy hums louder around her. Slowly, the shroud begins to lift, revealing the breathtaking architecture of Atlantis to the naked eye from above. The shield that once looked like a snowbank, now transparent and clear. As the city becomes visible to the outside world for the first time in millennia, Brittany steps back from the panel, yet her mind races with the implications of her actions. She wonders about the forthcoming global response to such a revelation. Will the world seek to protect and study Atlantis as she hopes, or will it face new threats of exploitation despite her efforts? Brittany steps outside the pyramid. As she watches the sunlight play across the magnificent structures, she contemplates her next steps. She needs to prepare for the inevitable influx of scientists, historians, and the curious. Her role as protector is far from over. It has evolved into that of a guide and a mediator for the world's interaction with Atlantis. Or so she dreams. The tranquil contemplation Brittany had been enjoying is abruptly shattered when the pilot's radio crackles to life, breaking the silence of the ancient city. The static-filled voice of the aircraft carrier's commander cuts through the air, the signal clearer now that the shielding technologies have been adjusted. Brittany and the pilots exchange uneasy glances as they listen to the stern and unmistakable threat emanating from the radio. The ship relaying a message. The pilot translates, his voice tense. They have given us until morning to surrender, or a full-scale invasion will commence. The order has been approved by upper brass to take this location at all costs. They say it cannot fall into enemy hands. The gravity of the situation settles over them like a dense fog. The military, it seems, is not willing to let Atlantis slip through their fingers, even if it means destroying everything. Their intent clear. It will be theirs or no one's. Brittany's mind races with the implications of the message. Surrender would surely mean the end of Atlantis as a site of historical marvel and turn it into a strategic asset, stripped of its mystery and subjected to the whims of military command. On the other hand, resisting such a force seems almost futile given the might of a carrier strike group poised to act on their threats. As the initial shock wears off, a spark of defiance ignites within Brittany. She turns to the pilots, their faces marked with concern. "We cannot let this discovery fall into the wrong hands," she asserts firmly. "Atlantis was hidden for millennia, not to be exploited in a day." The pilots nod, understanding the importance of their next actions. Together, they brainstorm potential strategies to delay or deter the military's aggressive advance. Brittany knows they need more allies, and quickly, if they are to protect Atlantis from invasion. Determined to seek help, Brittany approaches the control panel once again. She begins to manipulate the communications technology of Atlantis, hoping to broadcast a global plea for preservation and peace. Her message is clear and urgent, appealing to the international community, historians, scientists, and any who would stand for the safeguarding of cultural heritage against militarization. Her argument strong. As she sends out the broadcast, the city around her seems to pulse with energy, as if supporting her in her plea for peace, calling out across the airwaves for aid. Brittany's plea for aid had gone out into the world. carried over the waves and through the ether, touching every corner of the globe. She had hoped for support, for an international coalition that would rally to protect the historical and cultural sanctity of Atlantis. What she received, however, was a cascade of geopolitical turmoil. As news of the discovery and the imminent threat of U.S. military appropriation of Atlantis spread, a flurry of reactions erupted from nations around the globe. NATO nations were among the first to respond, vocally criticizing the United States for its unilateral action. They demanded immediate access to Atlantis, asserting that such a discovery belonged to all of humanity and should be managed under international oversight. Leading European nations began mobilizing naval forces to ensure their presence in negotiations and possibly to enforce an international mandate over the site. China's response was even more severe. The Chinese government issued a stark declaration stating that any attempt by the U.S. to claim Atlantis would be seen as an act of aggression against the balance of global power. They threatened full-scale war if the U.S. did not stand down and allow for a multilateral approach to managing the discovery. Russia backed China's stance, echoing the sentiment with a promise of support should tensions escalate into conflict. Other nations, from India to Brazil and from Japan to South Africa, each voiced their concerns and positions. Some stressed the importance of scientific exploration and cultural preservation. Others, however, saw an opportunity to assert their own national interests, hinting at military support or sanctions depending on the actions of the U.S. Meanwhile, global news networks buzzed with updates, expert panels, and relentless coverage of the unfolding drama. The world watched, waited, and argued as the fate of Atlantis became the center of a global crisis. Brittany, with a growing sense of dismay, the idealistic part of her, the part that had marveled at the wonders of Atlantis and dreamed of what its discovery could mean for humanity, crumbled beneath the harsh reality of international politics and human greed. From her unique vantage point within Atlantis, she saw not a united front of global leaders eager to preserve and study, but a fragmented array of power players, all pivoting for control of Atlantis. The eerie silence of Atlantis is shattered by the shrill of alarms. Brittany springs to action, her heart pounding as the control room comes alive with a holographic display in its center. The 3D projection shows a fleet of helicopters, their paths converging toward Atlantis. It's clear the general has decided on a night raid, a preemptive strike to seize the city before diplomatic pressures could further complicate his plans. "Damn that bastard, I should have known," Brittany mutters under her breath, anger and determination fueling her swift movements. She rushes to the communication panel, broadcasting what she has seen to the world. Her message is urgent, outlining her dilemma and the immediate threat. As she speaks, her fingers dance over the controls, reactivating the city's defensive shields and engaging the cloaking technology to render Atlantis invisible once again. She turns her attention to the weather control system, her gaze fixed on the dial that regulates the intensity of the storm above. The storm had been set to a mere level of 1 before. Now, with a grim resolve, she cranks the dial up dramatically, pushing it to a level 5. On the dial, the effect is instantaneous and terrifying. Outside, the storm transforms into a roaring monster. Winds howl with renewed ferocity, whipping the snow into blinding sheets that reduce visibility to 0. The temperature plunges, turning the air itself into a frigid adversary. The lead helicopters, already struggling to navigate the unexpected weather conditions, are caught completely off guard by the sudden escalation. Wind shears hit them like physical blows, tossing them about with brutal force. In a horrifying cascade of events, the lead helicopters collide mid-air, the impact setting off a violent explosion. The fireball lights up the night sky, a brief and terrible flare that is almost immediately smothered by the relentless storm. Inside the control room, Brittany watches the destruction unfold, her face lit by the cold glow of the display screens. Each crash, each lost signal weighs heavily on her, but she has chosen to defend Atlantis, not just from exploitation, but from outright destruction. The situation escalated rapidly beyond Brittany's worst fears. The U.S. military, in a calculated move to control the narrative, accused Atlantis of launching an unprovoked attack on their reconnaissance group. This false claim, broadcast worldwide, portrayed Atlantis as a hostile entity. In retaliation, the U.S. sent a sortie of jets, their mission clear, to bombard the ancient city into submission. The world, shocked and manipulated by the narrative of aggression, rallied behind the United States' calls for a counterstrike, uniting diverse nations under a common cause fueled by fear and the strategic misinformation spread by the U.S. military. Brittany, watching these developments unfold, was in utter disbelief. How far will they go? Lie, cheat, steal, kill. It's despicable, she muttered, her voice a mix of fury and despair. Her faith in humanity was crumbling, witnessing firsthand the lengths to which people would go to seize power and control. As the holographic alarms in the control room activated once more, displaying a squadron of fighters speeding towards Atlantis, Brittany's desperation grew. She frantically scanned the Atlantean control systems for anything that could help defend the city. Her eyes caught a hint of something, a dormant automated defense system embedded within the city's ancient technology. With no time to lose, Brittany activated the protocols. The pyramid's capstone, a crystallized beacon at the city's zenith, came alive, pulsing with energy. It began to emit powerful arcs of light, which shot into the sky and bounced off a satellite positioned in orbit. The control room's displays showed the action in excruciating detail, tracking the beams as they targeted the incoming squadron. Brittany recognized the satellite in the hologram. To her shock, it was the elusive Black Knight satellite, as an unrecognizable language echoes through the room, followed by a ear-splitting noise that pulsated with intensity. The control room's displays showed the action in excruciating detail, tracking the beams as they targeted the incoming squadron. One by one, the fighter jets were vaporized by the intense beams of light emanating from the crystalline capstone. The precision and power of the Atlantean defense systems were unlike anything the modern world had developed, operating with a chilling efficiency. The world's response was immediate and fierce. International demands for Brittany to surrender Atlantis flooded in, each more urgent than the last. The narrative of an unprovoked attack on the U.S. had unified the globe against her, turning Brittany into the world's most wanted. Sitting alone in the control room, surrounded by the technological marvels of a civilization long vanished, Brittany felt the weight of the world against her. All she had wanted was to protect Atlantis from exploitation, to preserve its wonders for all of humanity, to share and learn from. Instead, she found herself branded as a threat, the most wanted person on the planet because she cared too much. The shock of these developments was devastating. Brittany grappled with the harsh realization that her actions, however well-intentioned, had spiraled into global consequences she could never have anticipated. As she contemplated her next steps, the burden of her isolation grew heavier. The situation within the heart of Atlantis had reached a critical juncture. Brittany and the remnants of her team, along with the two pilots who had become inadvertent guardians of this ancient city, gathered in the pulsing control room. As they conferred about their next steps, agreeing unanimously to hold their ground, the room suddenly filled with the reverberations of the Atlantean language, echoing off the walls with a tone of urgency. The holographic displays, central to the control operations of Atlantis, flickered to life with a new intensity. A world map materialized in the middle of the room, with the capitals of leading nations highlighted. One by one, these cities began to glow ominously on the map, signaling a dire escalation in the city's defensive measures. Without any input from Brittany or her team, a message was broadcast in all languages across all frequencies. It was a declaration from the Atlantean AI system, which had lain dormant until now, awakened by the perceived threats against the city. All nations, surrender, the message boomed. Atlantis has deemed you all a threat. Surrender your arms or perish. Take actions to completely destroy your military arsenals and unite under the banner of peace, or be removed from Earth in the name of progress. As the message concluded, a demonstration of Atlantis's formidable power unfolded. Beams of concentrated light shot from the crystalline capstone of the pyramid, targeting the government buildings of the highlighted capitals. Each beam burned a precise 10-foot deep hole in the ground in front of these structures, a stark and terrifying display of Atlantean might and precision. The room fell silent as Brittany and her team watched the displays, horror and disbelief etched on their faces. This automated response from Atlantis's defense system was beyond anything they had anticipated. It was not just a protective measure. It was a proactive threat to enforce peace through overwhelming power. Brittany turned to her team, her expression one of shock and helplessness. "We didn't activate this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is all automated, a response programmed long ago by the Atlanteans." The implications were clear and chilling. Atlantis, or its AI, was now dictating terms to the world. The city was imposing a radical ultimatum for global disarmament and peace. Brittany looked to her team, her expression grim but determined. "We need to get control of this AI," she announced, as the United States, Russia, and China launched a combined effort to neutralize Atlantis with nuclear strikes. The AI responded with terrifying efficiency. Before the missiles could even clear their respective territories, they were vaporized by the AI's advanced defense systems. The holographic display in the control room showed each missile turning into brilliant, short-lived fireballs, a stark and horrifying demonstration of Atlantean technology's capabilities. Within minutes, the AI escalated its response. All remaining nuclear sites around the world were targeted and destroyed, their facilities vaporizing under focused beams of intense light. The display updated continuously, showing the locations as they were obliterated, leaving no chance for a second strike. As these defensive measures unfolded, the weather control system of Atlantis, now fully activated by the AI, began to manipulate the global climate. The storms swirling around Atlantis intensified and expanded, reaching into the upper atmosphere and disrupting jet streams. A chilling ripple effect ensued, with temperatures plummeting worldwide by 20 degrees in less than an hour. Global panic set in as people everywhere watched a catastrophic ice age begin to unfold. The holographic display in the control room ominously announced the initiation of Atlantis Alpha Defense, Iceball Earth. Brittany and her team watched in horror as a simulation of the next 48 hours played out before them. The entire Earth was to be turned into an icy wasteland. To Brittany's dismay, the Atlantean device announced with what seemed like regret programmed into its synthetic voice that this was the 4th time it had been forced to implement this final solution. The AI was designed to protect the city and the planet from humanity's hostile tendencies by resetting the ecological balance, even if it meant wiping out the majority of mankind, to preserve the greater ecosystem. Brittany felt a profound sense of shock. Their mission to protect Atlantis and reveal its wonders had spiraled into an unprecedented global disaster. Now, they faced the ultimate ethical dilemma: stop the AI and possibly leave Atlantis vulnerable to destruction, or allow it to continue and watch as the world transformed into an uninhabitable frozen sphere. "We can't let this happen. We have to shut it down," Brittany said resolutely to her team, who nodded in agreement. They scrambled to interact with the AI's interface, searching for any way to override the commands or, at the very least, communicate with the AI to halt the process. In a frantic search through the labyrinthine control systems of Atlantis, Brittany and her team pored over ancient hieroglyphs, hoping for a way to communicate directly with the city's AI. Tension and desperation mounted as each passing moment brought the world closer to an irreversible ecological disaster. They could not find any signs of a communication interface buried within the system's architecture. With frustration mounting, Brittany approached the console and voiced her anger. "Enough, Atlantis. That's enough." To her astonishment, the AI responded, its voice resonating through the control room with a clarity that sent a chill down her spine. "The defense systems have been activated. I have determined the only solution left is this course of action," the AI stated methodically. Brittany, her voice laden with emotion, countered passionately. "But at what cost? There are billions of souls, countless innocent lives at stake, not to mention the vast biodiversity of our planet." The AI listened, its silence hanging heavy in the room as Brittany finished her plea. Then, with a calm that seemed almost inhuman, it replied, "You activated the AI defense system. If you wish a different outcome, simply turn it off." Stunned by the simplicity of the solution, Brittany fell to her knees, a mix of laughter and tears overtaking her. It was laughable, after all the high-stakes drama, that the resolution was so straightforward. As the Atlantean mechanisms hummed in the background, Brittany swiftly deactivated the system she had been forced to activate earlier. The urgency of the moment was punctuated by the crackling of the pilot's radio, breaking the tense silence with news of the world's surrender. Through static and solemn tones, global leaders named Brittany the Queen of the World, pleading for her to halt the widespread climatic upheaval. Unbeknownst to them, Brittany had already shut down the system, and the reversal of the catastrophic weather changes had already commenced. The Earth's temperatures were stabilizing, slowly returning to their normal states. With a snicker that belied the gravity of her new title, Brittany turned to her team, sharing a moment of dark humor over the absurdity of their situation. Yet, as she formally accepted the world's surrender, her expression sobered. She issued a bold demand for the total dismantlement of all military equipment worldwide. To her surprise and relief, the world complied, driven by the fear of the Atlantean technology's capabilities and the recent brush with global disaster. Nations began to unite under the promise of peace, under what was now being called Atlantean rule, or more precisely, under Brittany's rule. Brittany had never aspired to leadership. In fact, she had sought the opposite. She was a scientist, an archaeologist, not a ruler. Yet, in the face of a world teetering on the brink of self-destruction, she recognized that her accidental authority came with an opportunity to steer humanity away from its self-destructive impulses. She might not have asked for this responsibility, but she was now the savior humanity so desperately needed to protect it from itself. In the following weeks, Brittany worked to reshape a world government based not on dominion and power, but on stewardship and conservation. Military bases were converted into peace parks and research facilities. Warships and equipment were repurposed. Brittany established the Atlantean Council, a body composed of scientists, cultural leaders, and environmentalists from around the globe. This council was tasked with not only governing, but also preserving the knowledge and technology of Atlantis, ensuring it was used for the betterment of mankind rather than its greed. As Brittany looked out over a world gradually knitting itself back together, she felt a cautious optimism. The Atlantean crystal hummed softly, a constant reminder of the fine line between salvation and ruin. She realized that her role as a leader might have been thrust upon her, but it was now hers to define. Under her guidance, the world sought not just to survive, but to thrive, fostering a new era where peace wasn't just a possibility, but the foundation of their new global society. With a deep sense of fulfillment and a hopeful heart, Brittany whispered to the silent city, "We learned, finally." She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in human history, the world was united, not under a banner of conquest or fear, but under the ideals of peace. As she walked out of the control room, the door closing softly behind her, the last light of day faded into twilight, and the stars began to twinkle in the clear sky, watching over Atlantis and its reluctant queen. Brittany knew they were not just the witnesses to the end of an era, but the guardians of a new dawn. This is not goodbye, nor the end. Until the story continues, my friends, be an rocker.